Hello, everyone. My name is David. I am going to be leading the session today. I'm finally a medical student, and I've a lot of experience with personal statements, whether that's writing my own, as I'm sure uh, you guys are aware, everybody has to write one, um, or whether that's marking other people's, or whether that's reviewing other people's personal statements. So hopefully you find this useful today. So just kind of going to go through what we're going to cover today. So we're going to be looking at, first of all, an introduction into personal statements, what they are. I'm sure you guys are already very aware of it, what a personal statement is, but we're just going to go through it again, just so we're all on the same page. We're going to look at the overall statement composition. So we're going to look at, how you want to structure it, what type of things you want to be thinking about when putting the personal statements together. And then we're also going to be looking at something called a planning table, which is just something, again, to help you organize yourself properly. So when you're going into actually writing it, so this is all planning. And then when you go into actually writing it, you actually have a better understanding of what you're going to be writing out. And then we're going to go into the body of it. So we're going to look at the introduction, how to write an introduction. We're going to look at the key areas you want to be covering in your in the body of your personal statements. So when you're talking about your experiences, so insight into a career in medicine, interpersonal skills, social and cultural awareness, responsibilities, and non-academic achievements. So those kind of some of the things. And there is more, there's other things in the list, there's things like communication skills and things like that, which kind of comes under interpersonal skills. But yeah, so we'll look at those things, and then we'll look at how to, really give a good conclusion, to kind of drive home the point that you are a good candidate for whatever you're applying for, in this case, medical school. And then we'll have time for some questions. With the questions, what I might do, I might see if I can go through the whole thing. And then after I've finished, we shouldn't be more than 35, 40 minutes. So which means we might not have too much time after that for questions. But what I can do is we can rejoin everyone into the link again. And then we can do like a mini Q&A session for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes or less, depending on what you guys want to do. Okay, so let's get right into it. So first of all, what is a personal statement? So it's about what makes you suitable to be a medical student, more importantly, a competent doctor. So, through your personal statement, you're trying to convey that, yes, I am supposed to be, I'm fit, I'm ready, I'm well, and well equipped to take on the challenge that is medical school, but also that I'm preparing myself to be a good doctor. So it's not just about convincing them or portraying yourself as a good medical student, but also as a good healthcare professional and medical professional, to be more specific. And so what you want to do is you want to kind of start off by writing out write a plan of a list. So you want to write all the experiences that you have, all your volunteering, your work experience. I've got here academic achievements, employment, voluntary work, healthcare and non-healthcare. Just literally write down everything that you have, your hobbies, all of that stuff. Specifically for hobbies, you want to be looking at things that you particularly have done over a very long period of time, or you're particularly high level of. For instance, I had played at the time basketball for up to 11 years. So I could write about that, and I was involved in the uni team and things like that. So those are things I could write about. And so you want to make a list of all those things. And something we don't want to do, although it seems very tempting, I always say something we don't want to do is you don't want to lie about your experiences. You don't want to lie about what you are putting in your statement. And the main reason for that is if they ask you questions about it in the interview, which they can, and you start fumbling because you made it up, then it's going to become very apparent that you made it up, or you're just not going to be able to draw out efficiently everything that you learned from the experience and be able to talk about it properly. So just be aware of that. Try not to lie in your personal statement, and don't be nervous or scared if there are things that you don't quite if you think you don't have enough experience, because I'll show you hopefully through this that it's not necessarily about the experiences you have, but about how you demonstrate what you've learned from those experiences. So moving on, this is the planning table that I talked about earlier. So this area here, the benefits of studies, is just pretty generic. So what you want to do is think about your experiences. What experiences have I learned? Like I said, list all your experiences. List the skills or attributes you've learned or developed. So things that you've learned, things that have given you insight into being a doctor, etc., etc. And then also then list the benefit for it in terms of, is it beneficial for you as a medical student? Is it going to be beneficial for you as a medical doctor? Or is it going to be beneficial in both instances? So here I've just got a list of random things, you know, work experience at a GP, working as a phlebotomist, volunteering at a care home, working at McDonald's, volunteering at our youth camp, playing 4 years of competitive sports for a city, playing ultimate frisbee in school. So as you can see here, what I've done with the list, I've written it in the order of most relevant to medicine to least relevant. So most clinically relevant to least clinically relevant. And your most clinically relevant thing could start off as, you know, working as a phlebotomist. It could start off at volunteering at a care home. You know, it's not limited to just clinical experience. So for instance, myself, for example, I didn't have much clinical experience. So I had volunteered at the BRI for 4 months, 5 months. But that was the most, you know, hospital experience I actually had. Yeah, so that's where I started off. I didn't do any work experience in terms of like GP, shadowing a doctor, or anything like that. I didn't have that experience, which I was really nervous about at the beginning. But then once I applied the principle of, it's not what your experience is, but how you draw from the experience, I was able to maximize the experiences I had. So yeah, so you kind of write a list of your experiences, most clinically relevant to least clinically relevant. And then you move on to what type of skills or attributes you've learned from them, what insights you've gained, or how you've developed. So the way you find this information is, number one, by looking at, I'm sure all of you or most of you have done some sort of portfolio or some clinical writing, I mean, not clinical, reflective reports, and you've thought about, okay, what skills are important? So things like communication skills, time management skills, teamwork skills, but also then look at the specific website of whatever medical school you're applying to. So I'm assuming a lot of you are applying to Leeds, or most of you, or all of you even. So what you want to do is you want to look through Leeds, go to Leeds admissions, go to their admissions for medical school, and then look at the things they're looking for. And it's very, very similar to this, you know, what time management, communication skills, leadership skills, stuff like that. Those are key things that are, you know, seen across the board. So those are key things that you want to be discussing about in your personal statements. But you want to tailor it to the specific university that you're applying to, or at least look at the universities, what their requirements are, so you can at least touch on them. And then after that, you look at the benefit for study or practice of medicine. So for instance, good leadership skills, that's really important for doctors, but time management skills, important for doctors and medical students. You need to be able to manage your time well. Medical school has a lot of content, and you need to be able to manage yourself well whilst not burning out, which is where work-life balance comes in. You know, it's necessary for students and doctors. You want to be able to perform effectively without killing yourself, basically. So you need to have that balance of something to stress relief, something to take your mind off medicine, but also have a good schedule for making sure you're meeting deadlines and your work and stuff like that. At this point, I just want to pause and welcome anyone who was in the waiting room. I believe I've let everyone in now. I'm just going to double check again. Everyone should be in though. Yeah, all participants should be in now. So welcome everybody who's in. Like I've introduced myself to everyone else. My name is David. I'm a final year medical student, and I'm leading the personal statement session today. So we've just talked about kind of what we're going to go through. And we've talked about things to include in your intro, and now I'm just discussing this system, this planning table system that helps you organize what you're going to write in your body of your personal statement. And again, if anybody has any questions or any comments, please message in the group chat, and I'll be happy to answer those at some point as we go through. Okay, moving on. So what we want to talk about next is the overall statement composition. So how do you want to structure your overall personal statements? So you want to, like I said already, check the specific things the medical schools are talking about and tailor it specifically to medicine. You don't want to be writing about physiotherapy, medicine, and occupational health in the same personal statement. You need to tailor it specifically for medicine. So the structure that I always advise going through is, what is your motivation? What have you done to explore, and how has that affirmed your decision to study medicine? So it's MIA, motivation, exploration, affirmation. So motivation, why did you want to be a doctor in the first place? What was that, light bulb moment that made you think, oh, actually being a doctor sounds like a good idea? Exploration, what did you then do to actually figure out what medicine was about? What did you do to gain insight or experiences that showed you what medicine was about? And then affirmation, just that final at the end, actually, look, all these things that I've learned, all these things that I've gone to explore have made me confident and sure that I want to study medicine. So in your introduction, so the kind of layout is introduction, body, and conclusion. So like I said before, more medically information to the less medically related information. So so that's just, again, with the table. So if you've done hospital experience, you want to talk about that first. If you've done volunteering with in a hospital or in a clinical setting, you want to talk about those things first and then move down. But like I said, as we go on, I'll break that down a little bit more and I'll show you a bit more what that looks like. So remember that you're telling your story. That's a really key thing with your personal statement. You're not just writing a generic personal statement. You want to, it is what it is. It's a personal statement. So you want to make sure it is personal to you. So you want to make sure that you're actually including things that are unique to you. And that might sound maybe difficult to do, but why do you want to be a doctor? Actually ask yourself that question. Why do you want to be a doctor? And think about how you can show that you've been inspired in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, that's kind of the breakdown. Does anybody have any questions at the moment? Any questions in the group chat? If you want to put it in the chat. All right, I will take that as a no. So moving on. So first we're going to look at the introduction. So introduction is, like I said, to express your initial intrigue in medicine. Short and sweet. You don't want to be writing a whole 500-word paragraph, because that's all your word counts. You don't want to be writing 100 words about what you ate for breakfast. Like, that's not the point of it. It's just to show that initial spark of interest. So you want it short and sweet, and you want to kind of segue or transition into the next paragraph, into the body of your personal statement very well. So for instance, I just have an example here. So the fascinating intricacies of the human body, combined with my innate desire to positively impact health and give back to my community, initially sparked my interest in medicine. And then it would go on and you would kind of explain more of an experience. And it says, this experience, amongst others, further inspired me to become a medical professional. So I remember in mine, I went to see a doctor. I was waiting for them. I had some things to do. They had to give me some keys or something. And as I was waiting, the doctor came out. He was in a surgery, and he came out of the surgery in his scrubs. And the patient's mother, who had just been performing the surgery on, came out, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, how's my child doing?" And he was just put her at so much ease. He said, "Oh no, he's fine. He just needs to rest. You can go see him soon. The surgery went fine." And she just had so much relief in her face. And I was just like, wow, that's amazing for somebody to be able to provide that much relief. And not just to a parent, not just to a patient, but to their parent as well, and really change not just an individual's life, but a whole family's life. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. That's a cool thing to be able to do. And that's that's kind of what I put as part of my inspiration to go into medicine. So interesting but unique stories like that are really important. Then you move on to the body of your personal statement. So we're looking for the insight, the things you did to gain more understanding that, you know, I actually want to do medicine, demonstrating to whoever's reading it that you've actually, it's not just, oh, I watched Grey's Anatomy and now I want to be a doctor. No, it's, I watched Grey's Anatomy, I want to be a doctor, but I actually want to find out what it's about. So I went and I did stuff. So things like hospital work, non-hospital work, things you want to include is you want to describe a little bit about the role, what you did, and also write about the duration of the experience if you've been doing it for a long time. So if you've been doing it for, if you shadowed a doctor for 6 months, I mean, that's a really long time. So you could write about that. Say I shadowed a doctor for 6 months, once a week, you know. Don't necessarily need to say once a week, but you could say you shadowed for 6 months. Or if you've been, like for instance, I said, I've been playing basketball for 11 years competitively on a team. So I could say I've been playing basketball competitively for 11 years. Or if you volunteered at Street Angels or something, I know that's really popular in Bradford. You could say I did that for a year or 2 years or however long. If it's a really long period of time, you should include it because it shows commitment. It shows that it's not, ooh, I kind of want to be a doctor, so I'm just going to quickly go to a session or seminar on how to be a good doctor. And oh, I definitely know that's what I want to do now. It shows that you've, over a long period of time, been preparing or gaining insight about medicine. What you don't want to include is planned experience. So don't put something that, oh, I'm planning on doing this, because the whole point of the personal statement is to show what you've learned. And you can't talk about what you've learned from something you haven't done yet. So this is just an example here. And it says, to gain further insight, I volunteered for 4 months in the BRI patient support sector. So this is actually a piece of my personal statement. I interacted with patients on a ward to alleviate feelings of loneliness, thus improving my ability to empathize. And then I wrote some other stuff there. And then I said, I also completed assigned tasks to help in the smooth running of the ward, developing my communication skills. So there you can see I talked a little bit about, you know, so I said to gain further insight, segueing from the introduction into the body of my personal statement. And I said, I volunteered, described a little bit about what I did at BRI, a little bit about my role. And then I talked about what I learned from it. So I alleviate feelings of loneliness. So that's kind of the experience. That was my role. And then what I learned, I improved my ability to empathize, right? And then again, I talked about being able to, you know, coordinate tasks, running errands for the wards, helping people, communicating with people, and that helped with my communication skills. So again, you can see that breakdown of experience, what I've learned from it, and how it's going to benefit me to be a medical student or doctor. So in this section, also you don't want to do it so it's like, oh, I've written it 20 times. Yeah, this is why I'm a good doctor. This is why I'm a good doctor. This is why I'm a good doctor. So you want to strategically place lines like, this will improve my ability, that this will stand me in good stead in medical school, or this will allow me to excel in medical school and as a medical professional, things like that. So you want to drop those lines, those one-liners dispersed throughout your personal statement, but not after every experience that you put down, if that makes sense. So moving on. So some interpersonal skills you can talk about, like I mentioned, communication skills, you know, verbal and non-verbal communication skills are what we're looking for, observed and participative as well. So things like, okay, I watched an MDT meeting, that's observed, or I actually participated as a member of staff, as a phlebotomist, or as part of my work experience, and I was able to present a case. Things like that are actually you've participated. Or I had to go talk to a patient. That's participative as opposed to just observed. Either is fine, but the point is to just draw out kind of what you've learned from it, and link the experience to the skill, in this case communication. So this is just an example here. I observed the medical pertinence of teamwork during an MDT meeting I attended. I witnessed the transition from discussing the appropriate course of action for patients to the practical application onwards. My experience of recording conversations after clinical visits as part of the clinical science course demonstrated my strong listening skills. I've learned how important listening is for a doctor to properly analyze and better understand patients' histories, leading to more specific diagnoses. So again, verbal, non-verbal things, non-verbal communications, listening, body language, you know, things like that. So you could talk about all those things as well. You know, eye contact, all those things are non-verbal communication skills. And those are things you can talk about and really draw out those specifics, because those specifics are the buzzwords. So I talked about listening skills specifically, and that's really important. Sorry, I just have a question here. Okay. I'm not sure if it's actually recorded. I will double check now to see if I can make sure. Oh, it actually is recording. Sorry. Yeah. So I will get back to you about that, because it's not me who organizes that. So the one of my colleagues will get back to you about sending recordings out by emails. I believe you've all put your email addresses into this, so I will be able to hopefully send those to you after. But yes, it is being recorded. So I hope this section makes sense about communication skills. So you want to, again, write about the experience you had, what you learned from it, and then how that benefits you as a doctor. So leading to more specific diagnosis. This is what will benefit you as a doctor. You know how to listen, and it's important for doctors to know how to listen. And now that you've understood that, you're going to be a better doctor, if that makes sense. So moving on. So now we're going to talk about social and cultural awareness. So medicine depends on interactions with all members of society. So you want to think about, you know, socioeconomic diversity, ethnic diversities as well. And also you want to think about people who are, you know, varying level of ability. So people who may be blind, hearing impaired, or disabled in some way. So you want to show awareness through relevance, experience, and again, you want to include duration if you can. So here's an example that I have here. So joining the Street Angels for 5 months, a volunteering service that aids the vulnerable, has given me alternative exposure. And then I talked a little bit about, you know, alternative exposure to people with different socioeconomic backgrounds. Understanding of how to interact with people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, like I said, as well as working as a Canadian international summer school camp, exposed me to a wide variety of ethnicities and age groups, increasing my social and cultural awareness. And I just talked about how this was an experience that will enable me to be a doctor due to the increasing ethnic diversity in the UK. So that just shows I've had lots of experiences that allowed me to talk to people of different socioeconomic backgrounds. You know, I've had experiences that has helped me talk to people of different age groups, because as we know, medicine, you talk to elderly patients all the way down to infants, yes, or even, you know, pregnant women. You talk to the baby sometimes in the stomach, just to, you know, help the mom feel more comfortable. And so you want to talk about varying age ranges if you can, and you also want to talk about varying ethnicities, because, you know, being culturally aware is really important and actually enhances your practice as a medical doctor. And there are various things that you need to be aware of. I'm sure many of you are aware of, for instance, Jehovah's Witnesses, they can't have blood transfusions and things like that. Just so things to be aware of as a medical professional that you do get taught anyway, but it's a bonus to show insight when you're writing your personal statement. So any questions at this point? Anybody have any questions? All right, I'll take that as a no. If you do have any questions that you want to ask at the end, just write them down. We can go through them at the end. Okay, so responsibilities. So responsibilities is kind of looking at doctors. One of the big differentiating factors between doctors and other healthcare professionals in a hospital setting is the fact that doctors have the final responsibility. Basically, when you're a consultant, you're looking after patients, you have the final say over nurses, over other allied healthcare workers, over healthcare assistants, whoever it is. You have the final say. That is your patient as a consultant. And so that ultimate leadership and responsibility is what sets the profession apart. And it's a really good thing you can talk about even in interviews. So for instance, they ask you, why do you want to be a doctor? And you talk about, oh, I'm able to care for people. They say, why not a nurse then? So instead of saying nurses are bad, which you should never, ever, ever say, you can say, well, ultimately the final responsibility of leadership, which I believe I am able to bring to the table, or I thrive at doing, is something that separates or distinguishes doctors from other allied health professionals. Sorry, my words are getting a bit twisted. But yeah, so leadership and responsibility, really important. So doctors carry, like I said, doctors carry a huge responsibility to their patients, and should be able to demonstrate that. You should be able to demonstrate that you've begun to develop that aspect of your character. So what experiences do you have with responsibility, and how do you understand your own limitations as a person as well? That also is part of responsibility. It's really, really important. For instance, if you're a doctor and you don't know what you're doing, it's way, way better to say you don't know what you're doing than to do something and then a patient suffers for it, because then you're just in trouble, the patient's in trouble. It doesn't help anybody. So it's important to be able to recognize your limitations. And so writing that you have insight into that is a good thing to point out. So here I have, as an example, by volunteering at a childcare center for over a year, I have demonstrated my ability to be a reliable, responsible, and committed individual. Being part of a team accountable for over 100 children required taking responsibility in knowing my own limitations and when to ask for help. So I talked there about, obviously I'm responsible for all these children, but also if somebody hurts themselves, I need to be able to say, okay, I don't know what to do now, I need help. And, understanding my limitations in that context was really important. Moving on, so I believe this is the final part of the body. So looking at your non-academic achievements. So medical schools believe that doctors with interests outside of medicine make more successful doctors. And that's just true. If your life is just focused wholly on medicine, you're going to burn out, and we want to prevent burnout. And GMC and other governing bodies want to prevent burnout. It's important now that you start to think about, work-life balance, lifelong learning, or self-regulated learning. So in this example, I said, for the past 11 years, I've been actively involved in competitive basketball. Like I said before, this year, I captained the university men's team through various successes, culminating in us being awarded Sports Team of the Year. The role has allowed me to maintain a healthy work-life balance. And then I talked a little bit about leadership there, I think, as well. I'm not sure. I don't think I did, actually. But desire to continuously improve, demonstrating my understanding of lifelong learning. So it's important to talk about lifelong learning. It's important to talk about work-life balance. It's important to talk about self-regulated learning. The fact that, you're able to manage your time well, to regulate how you study, to maximize what you get out of your study sessions, and ultimately to be able to excel in medical school and as a healthcare professional. So that's kind of that section. I always put the non-academic achievements last because, like I said, it's least clinically relevant, but it's really good to put in that you have some sort of hobby, especially specifically ones that you've been doing for a long period of time, because those are the ones that really count. Those are the ones that really demonstrate learning. For instance, if you went to play hockey once, you're not going to be able to demonstrate as well teamwork skills. But if you've been playing hockey for 2 years or a year or 6 months, then you can demonstrate, okay, I've been doing this for a long time. I understand what it means to actually participate in team events and develop my teamwork skills. So you want to put things that you've been doing for longer, if possible. And like I said, everybody should have something. That's the beauty of this. Unless all you do is stay at home all day and do nothing and never leave your house, everybody should have something that they've been doing, some sort of extracurricular activity or clinical experience that they've been gaining, whether that's throughout uni, whether that's before uni, it doesn't matter. Just make sure you're putting things that are most clinically relevant first to least clinically relevant, touching on all these key things that we've talked about. So does anybody have any question at this point? Oh, do your experiences have to be recent? So the more recent, the better, obviously. If you've done, you know, if I played, I did some work experience. Well, let's say you put, I worked at a nursery 10 years ago. I mean, that is probably, whatever skills you're able to draw out of that, you should probably be able to show some more recent exposure to those skills. But if it's like during year 10, I did work experience as part of your year 10 work experience thing, that is valid because it's still work experience. It's still giving you insight into medicine. And you can put that, but the more recent, the better. Yeah, so it's not just the most clinically relevant, but it's also the more recent, the better. But if you don't have as recent experience, that's okay too. So when I wrote my personal statement, I think I had volunteered at a care home 3 or 4 years prior, maybe 4 years prior. So that's still quite a while, you know, prior. And so, and that was still good, more than good enough. I did quite well in my personal statement section.
Shafi, stop bullying me.
Hello. Okay, I'm not sure what happened there, but I hope that makes sense. So you have a lot of experience in. Yeah, so like I said, if you have experience that's relevant, clinically relevant experience can be a bit older, but less clinically relevant experience, I would advise probably making, having more recent examples, as recent as you can get. If it's 5 years old, that's fine. If it's 10 years old, I would say you're struggling a bit there. But up to 5 years, without, I mean, there's no specific number on it, but the more recent, the better. I hope that makes sense. But I can clarify a bit more at the end. So we're just going on to the final section now. So looking at your conclusion, what you want from your conclusion is a summary of the key points. You don't want to add anything new in your conclusion. So don't add, oh, and I did more experience here, and that's why I know I'm great. You know, don't add anything new in your conclusion. Make sure it's still based on what you've been talking about previously. So you want to specifically look at your experience, how your experiences have affirmed. So remember, we had that trio of thinking, and the last one was affirmation. So how this has affirmed your decision to study medicine. And you want to make sure it's really punchy. So you want to, you know, be like, yeah, I've gassed myself through this whole thing, and that's why I'm sick, basically. Like I'm the best. Like that's the vibe you want to give off at the end. Not necessarily cocky or arrogant, but definitely, nah, I'm good. You should definitely consider me. I stand out amongst everybody else, and I deserve a place at medical school and as a doctor. So for instance, I put, in my aspirations for success and excellence, my commitment and competitive attitude will help me excel in medical school. I have a better understanding of the challenges and pressures practicing medicine presents, and I believe I have developed numerous transferable skills that will help me cope. Because cope, and I wrote some other stuff, and I said to become a valued contributor to the healthcare sector as a diligent, empathetic, and responsible medical professional. So that's it's strong, you know. It says, look, I'm excellent. I can do well. I've done a lot to know that I can do well. I have a better understanding of the challenges and pressures practicing medicine presents. But I know that all the skills I've learned have prepared me for it. And actually, I'm still going to be great and be a great contributor to the medical field. So you want to make sure it's punchy, not too long, and really sells. It's a final sell. It's the last thing they read, right? So you want to make sure it's coming across as, yes, I actually know what I'm doing. I've done this. I'm here to go all the way, to be a good medical professional and be a good medical student as well. So that's kind of where we're going to end it in terms of actual content. So again, just to go back to the beginning there, some key things you want to look at are, like I said, motivation, exploration, affirmation. So motivation, introduction, exploration, the body, and affirmation is the conclusion. And then you want to go through the body of your personal statement, looking at what your experience was, what skills you learned, and what benefit it has for you as a medical student or medical professional, or how you prepared for that. And you want to look at all these different skills, looking from most clinically relevant to least clinically relevant, most recent to least recent, and making sure that you're touching on specifics. So for instance, like I said in the communication section, verbal, non-verbal, looking at listening skills, looking at body language, eye contact, things like that. Work-life balance, you want to mention, duration of things if you've done them for a long time. For instance, here, like I said, for 11 years. And make sure you're both concise but specific. Like concise but thorough. So you're writing everything that you need to write. So that's everything from me today. Thank you guys for listening. I hope everybody heard me throughout the whole thing. But this is being recorded, so you should be able to get access to this hopefully at the end, but that's not up to me. I will leave that to my colleague to organize that with you guys. So we have about 5 minutes left of this session. So why don't we just do the Q&A now, and then I will go back to, and then we can end the session. So if you have something to say, just put message on the group chat that you have something to say, and then I will unmute you and you can ask your question if you want to ask everyone, or if you want to ask me privately, I can answer everyone on here as well. So I have a question here that says, can I include that I spoke or read about medical school experiences? Yes, you can. So you can say, actually, to gain further insight, I went and looked at various websites or attended various open days to get a better idea of what medical school entailed, looking at the curriculum and things like that. And I saw that kind of direct dissection or prosection was involved in the Leeds curriculum. And I thought that was very interesting. And after doing more research, I realized that that's an amazing way to develop my interest in anatomy and surgery or something like that. What I would say is you don't want to, because it's not it's not as much of an experience. I would say maybe make it a short paragraph or as part of a bigger experience. I would say I wouldn't have it as a lone experience, because it's not really proper, like I went out and I did something within the medical field, if that makes sense. Can I start my personal statement by telling a story about my experience? Yes, you can. So you want to do that. You want to tell a story. You want to tell a unique story about yourself. So you want to talk about, something unique to you. Be aware that you don't want to just, swallow up all your word count, but you do want to talk a little bit about your own personal experience. You still want to use pretty, don't use slang in it. Use formal writing. But yes, do tell your personal experience. So my main activity is solo traveling. Do you think I could take anything from this? Yeah, you could take lots from. So somebody said that their main experience is traveling. So there's lots of things you can draw from it. Things like communication. You still had to talk to new people, and the experience of talking to people from various areas of the world. That's communication skills. That's huge communication skills. You could also talk about organization and time management. You are the one who had to organize your trips. You are the one who had to fly out to various places. You need to be aware of how much money you were spending. You need to be self-aware of your environment and how you communicate. Self-awareness is a huge thing. It's emotional intelligence. you improved your emotional intelligence. Those are all part of communication. And so you can talk about time management, you can talk about work-life balance, you can talk about communication skills there easily. Can I add a bit of humor? I go to the gym. So with the humor thing, it's a fine line. I would say you may be a bit lighthearted, but I wouldn't try to be humorous, because humor is based on whoever you're talking to, right? So if you have somebody who's reading it that doesn't understand your humor, you've wasted words. Or if you have somebody that's reading it that is offended by your humor, you've lost marks, you know. If you have somebody that understands your humor, yeah, you could get bonus points, but I would say it's a very risky move. So I would say you can be at parts lighthearted, but I wouldn't advise being humorous. Just mostly because, again, although it is personal to you, it's still an academic piece of writing. You have to see it as a very formal piece of writing. So it's personal, but it's formal still. So you just need to be aware of humor and maybe not add as much of that. Any other questions? Any questions at all? Like I said, there may be the potential for a future Q&A kind of situation. I'm not sure. I'd have to talk to Chris, my colleague, about that. There may be the opportunity for other things like, you know, interview prep and things like that. But again, Chris will keep you updated through various emails and stuff. And like I said, I'll find out about the getting you guys the recording. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. And if there's anything else that you need help with, just, you know, message Chris or send an email or something like that as well. Oh, okay, we have one more question. I'll take this as the last one probably. How many words should we be aiming for ideally? So how many words should you be aiming for? You should have a word allowance. So it varies. Some places say 4,000 characters or something like that, or 3,000 characters. Some places say 500 words. I think it's 700 characters actually. But 500 words, or so you just need to look specifically at what they're advising you for. How many words? Key attributes medical schools are looking for. So like I said, go on their websites, go on how to apply, or how to, and they'll tell you, it says on there, for personal statement, you know, we want to hear about your personal statement. We're looking for candidates with, and then it will list some of those things. On most, if not all, medical schools, or all higher education curricula, it shows what they're looking for in the how to apply section. Yeah, okay, great. So thank you very much, guys. And hope all the best with your personal statements. Yeah, hope this has been useful, and hope to be in future correspondence with some of you in the future. All right then, I will end this now.